You've stopped texting. They've stopped texting. And now you're sitting inside a silence that feels so loud, it has weight. You're staring at your phone, replaying everything, asking the same question in 10 different forms. Did they even notice I'm gone? Are they relieved? Do they miss me? Or is this exactly what they wanted from the start? Here's what most people don't understand about mutual no contact with an avoidant partner. This isn't an ending, it's a reveal. Mutual silence doesn't measure who breaks first, it measures who transforms. It shows you what the relationship actually was, what their capacity really is, and what you were doing to keep the whole thing alive. And if you listen carefully, the silence is going to teach you something your anxiety could never learn through chasing. You can't force intimacy. You can't negotiate emotional presence. You can't love someone into capacity. But you can finally see the truth when the noise stops. So let's talk about what's really happening right now. Inside their nervous system, inside your nervous system, and inside the dynamic itself. Because I promise you, the first stage is not what your mind is imagining. The first stage for an avoidant, relief that feels like safety. If you're anxious, you assume they're suffering. If you're loyal, you assume they're missing you. If you're still emotionally attached, you assume they're sitting there thinking about you the way you're thinking about them. Most of the time, they're not. In the beginning of mutual silence, avoidants often feel relief, not because they don't care, not because you meant nothing, but because their nervous system interprets closeness as pressure, and pressure to an avoidant nervous system feels like danger. This is the part people keep moralizing instead of understanding. Avoidant attachment isn't just a personality quirk, it's a stress response. When intimacy increases, their system activates deactivating strategies, automatic internal moves designed to reduce emotional closeness. They downplay feelings, they focus on flaws, they pick fights over small things, they get busy, they create distance and then tell themselves it's independence. It's not conscious manipulation most of the time. It's a self-protection reflex. So when you go silent and they go silent, the avoidant body relaxes. No expectations, no need to explain, no pressure to be emotionally available, no fear of being needed. To them, that quiet can feel like the first deep breath they've taken in months. And that's why mutual silence can confuse you. Because you're expecting them to feel what you feel, but they don't start where you start. Anxious types experience distance as danger. Avoidant types experience closeness as danger. So in the beginning, silence feels like safety. But here's the detail that changes everything. In the past, they felt safe because they believed you would reach out. Even during a distance, there was still a hidden tether. Your pursuit, your reassurance, your effort, your willingness to bridge the gap. They could withdraw and still feel connected because you did the connecting. That's the cheat code avoidants often live on. Emotional security without vulnerability. But when the silence becomes mutual, that tether disappears. Now the calm doesn't feel clean anymore. Now it starts to feel like something else. Because now there's a new factor they hate more than intimacy: loss of control. The second stage, the control fracture. Avoidants survive through control, not in an obvious, tyrannical way, in a nervous system way. They regulate closeness by controlling access. When they feel overwhelmed, they back away. When they feel lonely, they return slightly. When they feel you pulling away, they often reappear, not with depth, but with a signal. Just enough to restore safety. But mutual no contact breaks the system, because now you aren't chasing. Now the usual rhythm is disrupted. Now the distance isn't something they initiated and can end whenever they want. Now it's real, and that's when the relief begins to change. First, it becomes curiosity, then confusion, then a low level irritation that doesn't even make sense to them because the question starts building quietly. Why aren't they reaching out? You have to understand what that question really means. It doesn't always mean, I miss you. Often it means, my system expected you to keep the door open. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects something avoidants don't like facing. You might be okay without them. You might be moving on. You might not be available on demand anymore. And that threatens the role you played in their emotional economy. Because in many anxious, avoidant dynamics, you were the regulator. You were the one who carried the uncertainty. You were the one who kept hope alive. You were the one who turned inconsistency into something tolerable by constantly compensating. So when you stop, they feel a crack in the reality they relied on. And this is where the avoidant mind starts doing what it does best, constructing stories. They may tell themselves you're playing games. They may assume you're trying to manipulate them. They may say you're immature. They may decide you're not right for them. But underneath those rationalizations, a different emotion is slowly waking up. It's the emotion avoidants hate most: need. Not wanting, not nostalgia. Need. Because need means vulnerability. Need means exposure. Need means you might have to reach out and risk rejection. Need means you might have to admit you cared. And for an avoidant, caring is dangerous. So instead of reaching out directly, many avoidants do something that looks small, but is extremely revealing. They test the third stage, the testing behavior. This is the stage where you start seeing activity that feels meaningless but isn't. They watch your stories quickly. They like something old. They react to a post. They send a random, hey. They ask a casual question that doesn't matter. They send something that looks innocent. Hope you're doing well. Saw this and thought of you. Random question. These are rarely true reconnection attempts. They are probes. They're checking whether you're still emotionally available while allowing them to stay emotionally protected. Think of it like someone knocking on a door without wanting to be seen through the window. They want access without vulnerability. They want reassurance without responsibility. They want to know you're still there without having to fully step toward you. And this is where men get trapped again, because the anxious side hears the breadcrumb and thinks, this means they miss me. This means they're changing. This means there's hope. But here's the truth. A breadcrumb is not a bridge. It's a test. And what they're really testing is not love. They're testing control. Can I still reach you? Can I still activate you? Can I still get a response? Can I still reopen the loop without doing any work? If you reply immediately with warmth and openness, you teach them the same thing you taught them before. I'm still here. I'm still accessible. I'm still willing to do the emotional labor. And the avoidance system calms down. Not because intimacy is returning, but because control has been restored. Then often, they go quiet again. The cycle continues. Breadcrumb, response, silence, anxious spiral, repeat. So if you want to read the situation correctly, stop asking, did they reach out? Start asking, how did they reach out? Because how tells you everything. What's happening to you in the same silence? Now let's talk about the other side of this, because this is the side that actually decides your future. At first, mutual silence is brutal. If you're the anxious one, your nervous system reads distance as abandonment. Your brain starts scanning for meaning. Every minute feels like evidence. Every hour feels like a verdict. You replay conversations. You analyze tone. You wonder if you made a mistake. You want to fix it because fixing feels like safety. That's anxious attachment, the urge to restore closeness at any cost. And in the past, that urge probably made you reach out. Apologize. Offer peace. Offer reassurance. Offer another chance, even when you weren't the one who broke it, because you didn't just want the relationship. You wanted the nervous system relief of connection. But mutual silence does something powerful for you if you stay in it long enough. It shows you how much of your life was being spent managing their distance. It shows you how many of your emotions were being dictated by their availability. It shows you how many of your standards you softened to keep the connection alive. And if you don't break the silence, something you didn't expect begins to happen. You start getting your energy back, not in a motivational, quote, way, in a physical way. Your appetite stabilizes, your sleep improves, your mind becomes clearer. You stop living in their mood. You stop waking up and checking for proof. You stop negotiating with yourself about what you're allowed to need. And slowly, you start realizing something that will change how you date forever. You weren't just missing them. You were missing the hope. You were addicted to the intermittent reinforcement. You were bonded to inconsistency. You were trained to interpret breadcrumbs as love. That's why mutual no contact becomes a crucible. It burns off illusions. It doesn't just separate you from them. It separates you from the version of you who thought you had to earn love through endurance. And that's when the silence shifts from punishment to protection, from deprivation to freedom, from waiting to choosing. The avoidance longer timeline, when the emotions actually arrive. Here's a truth that will save you months of confusion. Avoidants often feel relief first, then grief later. Anxious people feel grief first, then relief later. That's why the early stages feel unfair. You're suffering while they seem fine. But if the silence holds, the avoidant will often hit a delayed emotional wave. Not always, but often. Because once the threat of closeness is gone, their nervous system stops screaming. And only then do the real feelings become audible. That's when nostalgia shows up. That's when loneliness creeps in. That's when they start remembering the good moments, not the pressure moments. That's when they start missing the steady presence you provided. And here's the painful part. Sometimes they miss what you did for them more than they miss you. Sometimes they miss the emotional regulation you offered. Sometimes they miss the stability of your pursuit. Sometimes they miss the feeling of being wanted without having to risk wanting back. So when they return, you have to know how to tell the difference between real growth and recycled pattern. Because both can look similar at first, both can start with contact, both can include nostalgia, both can include sweetness, but only one includes capacity. How to tell if they're evolving or repeating? Here are the signals of an avoidant who is genuinely doing inner work. They name the pattern without you dragging it out of them. They acknowledge the distance and the impact it had on you. They don't pretend nothing happened. They don't slide back in with casual small talk only. They show a willingness to have an uncomfortable conversation. They take responsibility without turning it into self-pity. They don't rush intimacy, but they don't avoid it either. They speak in specifics, not vague feelings. They ask what you need going forward. They demonstrate consistency over time, not intensity for a day. Most importantly, they move toward you even when it's uncomfortable, because growth is movement. Now compare that to the signals of the old pattern. They pop up with, "Hey stranger," energy. They act like time erased everything. They avoid accountability conversations. They keep it light, flirty, surface level. They talk in nostalgia, but don't address the behavior. They test your availability, then disappear again. They show up when they're lonely, stressed, bored, or missing validation. They want access, not repair. They want comfort, not intimacy. They want you near, but not close. That's not evolution. That's regulation. And it will drain you again the moment you reopen the door. So your job is not to interpret their return as proof of love. Your job is to interpret their return as proof of capacity. Because missing you isn't the same as being able to love you well. A person can miss you and still be unsafe for your nervous system. A person can want you and still be incapable of consistent intimacy. And this is what the silence exposes, whether their desire includes a responsibility or whether it only includes access. The real point of mutual silence. Here's the hard truth most people don't want. Mutual silence isn't designed to get them back. It's designed to give you back to yourself. Because the biggest damage in an anxious, avoidant dynamic isn't the breakup. It's what you become while trying to keep it alive. You become smaller. You become quieter. You become less direct. You become hyper attuned to their mood. You become addicted to crumbs. You become afraid to ask for normal relationship behavior. You start calling basic consistency too much. And when mutual silence holds, you start remembering what your baseline was before this person trained you to accept uncertainty as love. You start rebuilding your standards. You start strengthening your boundaries. You start learning a lesson that will protect you for the rest of your life. You cannot love someone into healing. You cannot sacrifice yourself into making someone ready. You cannot chase someone into choosing you. Love that requires you to self-abandon isn't love. It's an anxiety contract. And the silence breaks the contract. What happens next? So where are you right now? You're in the quiet. And the question isn't, will they reach out? The question is, who are you becoming in this silence? Are you using the silence to heal? Actually heal. To regulate your nervous system without needing a response? To rebuild self-respect? To strengthen boundaries that you'll keep even when they return? Or are you holding your breath, waiting for them to validate your worth by coming back? Because that's the final test, not for them, for you. If they return with breadcrumbs and you accept them, the old cycle is still alive. If they return with accountability and you require consistency, something new becomes possible. And if they don't return at all, you still win. Because you're no longer doing the exhausting job of trying to convince someone to choose you. Silence doesn't destroy real connection. It reveals whether the connection was real without you carrying it. And if it wasn't strong enough to survive without you chasing, then what you're losing isn't love. It's labor. The labor of managing someone else's fear of intimacy. So let the silence do its job. Let it show you the truth. Let it rebuild you. Because the strongest outcome in mutual no contact is not reconciliation. It's transformation. And once you transform, you stop begging for consistency. You start requiring it. That's when your life changes, whether they return or not. If this hit, leave a comment with one word that describes what the silence is teaching you. Clarity, peace, grief, power, withdrawal, freedom. And remember this, the silence isn't empty. It's full of your upgrade.